Hi, everyone. I've got my calming tea tonight, and I could very easily get caught up in the nice music that Michael has provided for our opening. So thank you, Michael, for that. We appreciate everything you are doing to make these run so smoothly and keep us all on task. If you are joining us for the first time tonight, or if you are new to Zoom, Michael will be posting the Zoom instructions in the chat so you can refer to those. It is my pleasure again to welcome everyone, and I call the fourth session of the 59th annual meeting of the Kansas-Oklahoma Conference to order. Before we introduce our speaker for this evening, we want to take a few minutes to hear from Phillips Theological Seminary, because they are sponsoring Julian's presentation tonight, and we're very appreciative of that. Many of you know, especially if you have attended in-person conferences in the past, that we have for many years been able to count on the presence of the folks from Phillips Theological Seminary here in Tulsa. They've sponsored a meal before and always been in our display area and welcomed conversations. At this virtual meeting, they could have opted out, but they didn't. And that, I think we can all agree, is the mark of a true partner. So I want to begin our evening tonight with a few words from Phillips.
Hi, I'm Kurt Gortney, Senior Director of Communications at Phillips Theological Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And with me is our Dean of Students, Marianne Morris. Marianne, thank you so much for being here. Mm-hmm. And I also want to tell our folks with the KOUCC conference that you're the first to see this multimedia studio in progress we're developing at Phillips. And I also want to tell you about something else, is that coming very soon to a podcast app near you will be a new series we're calling Why Seminary? And Marianne is going to be a regular part of this new podcast.
So before I say more about the podcast, I'd like to say how much I miss being with you all this year. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this video with you. Surveys have shown us that prospective students, the biggest decision for them is not which seminary to attend, but should they attend seminary at all? So we're really hopeful that this new podcast will help individuals think through that important decision.
Marianne, I know everyone's been affected by the global pandemic, including those of us at Phillips. Can you tell us a little bit about what we've done in terms of helping keep everybody, including our students, protected?
Yes. So just like the KO conference decision to move online, we have done the same thing in order to protect our students and our employed community. But Phillips felt very comfortable doing that because we have a decade of experience offering our curriculum in that format. Also, the Board of Trustees, out of their sensitivity for the struggles that are happening right now, have offered all of our students extra tuition aid assistance.
Why don't you go ahead and share with us the information about what the trustees did?
As I mentioned, our Board of Trustees has approved additional tuition aid grants for all of our United Church of Christ students. And all you have to do to receive that grant is to be enrolled in a degree program at Phillips. We've also taken additional steps to make sure all of our courses are accessible online. Some of our courses have students meeting together remotely all at the same time. Others are designed so that students can complete all of their coursework online at a time that's most convenient to them. The seminary has also committed even more resources to maintain the quality we've come to expect from Phillips education. Our faculty members are all experienced online teachers who understand the unique needs of remote learning. Our new academic dean, the Reverend Dr. Lee H. Butler Jr., comes to Phillips from Chicago Theological Seminary. He is already making a difference by asking all faculty members to use Howard Thurman's book, Jesus and the Disinherited, as a touchstone for their teaching. Phillips continues to build its faculty ranks. The newest faculty member is Dr. Peter Capretto, an assistant professor of pastoral care in religion and culture. He brings a background in trauma studies, chaplaincy, disability studies, and empathy to his new position.
We could take a lot of time to talk about why Phillips is such a good choice for theological education. But one thing I want to add, especially if you're a person who is interested in learning more about spirituality, theology, communications, leadership in churches, but really aren't interested in getting a degree, you need to check out our Center for Lay Ministry Training. Our Center for Ministry and Lay Training is open to anyone. These 8-week courses are $75 each, thanks to significant contributions from our donors. Marianne, I know we're not offering on-campus visits right now, but what should a prospective student do if they need more information about Phillips?
Yes, please contact us. Reach out. We would be delighted to talk to anyone who might be interested in studying at Phillips. And as a special gift to our KO conference friends, we would now like to share this gift of music from one of our students.
The Lord bless you and keep you. May God lift God's countenance upon you and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace, and give you peace. May God's face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, and be gracious. The Lord be gracious, gracious unto you.
Wow, such sweet music. What a blessing that is for us. Thank you to Phillips from everyone here tonight and for adding that special, special music at the end. We have asked Reverend Rachel Pryor to introduce our speaker tonight because Rachel participated in the initial Next Generation Leadership class with Julian in 2012. Rachel is one of our KO pastors, currently serving as chair of the Committee on Ministry, Subcommittee D. And over the next year, Rachel will also serve as chair of our search committee. Rachel, welcome and thank you.
Sure, thanks, Bobby. It's a privilege to be able to introduce the Reverend Julian DeShazier tonight. He has served as senior pastor at University Church in Chicago, Illinois since 2010. University Church is a congregation of the UCC and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and Julian has ordained standing in both denominations. If tonight is your first time to meet and hear Julian, you are in for a memorable and moving experience. Julian, also known as J-Quest, is an Emmy Award-winning performance artist, musician, prophet, storyteller, and advocate who is continuously exploring, challenging, and reinventing the relationship between music and faith. He's a Chicago native and a Morehouse College alum who did his graduate work at the University of Chicago Divinity School. Julian is a 2020 Leadership Greater Chicago Fellow and was also recognized by Crain's Chicago Business as one of 40 under 40 leaders in Chicago. Working with the community, Julian was instrumental in bringing a level 1 trauma center to the south side of Chicago. You may also recognize Jaquest's work in the UCC from General Synod, and more recently from a May 31st presentation of Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III's The Cross and the Lynching Tree, a Requiem for Ahmaud Arbery, where Julian joined panelists Linda Sarsour and Reverend Naomi Washington Liebhardt to discuss the role of the Christian Church in actively dismantling racism in the United States. You can read more about Julian's extensive, impressive accomplishments on the annual meeting website, but I'd like to share briefly from my own experience with the person behind the well-deserved accolades. I first met Julian when we were both invited, as Bobby mentioned, to join the second cohort of the Next Generation Leadership Initiative, which is a continuing education resource for young clergy that is funded and overseen by the pension boards. My early strong impression of Julian was of a person who is distinctly gracious. I don't only mean that in the polite, good manners, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all kind of graciousness. I mean that he is the kind of person who knows how to hold space for people who need to speak, for stories that need to be told, even when the teller is faltering or the story is clumsy. I mean that he is the kind of person who asks difficult questions, not to catch another person in a flaw or error, but to genuinely help others do the work to improve. And he expects the same treatment right back. I mean that he is the kind of person who knows, as an artist, as a person of faith, as a human, what it means to stumble and fall and stand up again, to keep pushing through creative work or community building that seems impossible, to recover from setbacks. Julian has an incredible resume of success because he's not afraid of tackling work that is hard and will take a long time, but also because he inspires others to believe him and to join him in believing that nothing is impossible. He speaks about the importance of making space to do whatever creative thing it is that you do, because only you can do it. Because the world needs that creativity from you, even when it doesn't always feel that way. And seeing and encouraging the potential and the intrinsic worth in others, Julian has a unique gift for nurturing sacred community. I'm so honored to introduce and welcome the Reverend Julian DeShazier to our annual meeting tonight. Thank you for being with us.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Rachel, my friend and sister, in doing this work together. It's good to see your face. It's good to see the many of you all who have gathered here on Thursday evening from your part of the world. I greet you from Chicago. I wish I could be there, but I guess it's safer to be here and safer for all of you all to be where you are. And so we're going to do this thing. And the way we're going to do it is, now every time I get in front of people, like I got to do the music. That's a part of who I am. It's just authentically me. And so we have to do it via video this time. And so I'm going to start with that. And we will go from there. I want to make sure that this works. Yep, you all see that okay? That's good. All right, let's start. Let's start. Inhale the night fumes, filling with the black
Mark Zuckerberg. Riding in the city of when we in the typhoon trying to win. There's something weird about tonight's moon. It's not a cloud on it, like I shown it to remind me of my wildin' God's on it. I see it and remind me what I should, but I'm thinking what I could do. PM demons start talking to the good you. And how you talking reckless, text message from you left behind when you first met him. Engine change, new oil with the liquid courage, return to old Bart Simpson days. Deviant smile, hand out the window of the hand, waiting for the reply. Tell your homies goodbye. Detour seems smart, so you wake up with Seymour. You like Miss Krabappel, you woke up with Seymour. Bad actions, bad decisions. Both began here with bad intentions, but she was bad and she been so good for so long. Deserve a little break, cause you been so strong. That's the evil of the night, like we wrote in that song. Which song? The last song, saying I want it all. And the curves on her frame, cause she ain't basketball. Now I could be Kobe here and pass to y'all. Live strong for the hood, who try to live strong, but break down after trying all night long. Got a mind on the bump and grind all night long, but still be up in the pews on Sunday morning. Live strong. To the ones making plans, they ain't trying to dance. Live strong. To the ones sick and tired, just throw up your hands. It's a record only I could have made. Destiny. And I made it back in the 8th grade. When I started writing and my girlfriend hated and scribbled on every page. I dumped her before a gym, still dumping them to this day. And it's the nighttime, ain't it? As we ride, ironic the sun hides. We turn into Mr. Hyde. Go butterflies, turn back into caterpillars. Phone by my side, might as well be a trigger. Oh well, said kids who settled on being killers. Smoke cigars, pretending we all stars. So stylish, so ignorant, pretending we all stars. Is this a Friday in Vegas at All Stars? Is this a rental or that's really y'all car? Young asked for advice, I told him look who you are. Striving to be better, they hit me at all hours, saying I've done wrong. I tell them live strong. This one is for the hood, who try to live strong, but break down after trying all night long. Got a mind on the bump and grind all night long, but still be up in the pews on Sunday morning. Live strong. To the ones making plans, they ain't trying to dance. Live strong. To the ones sick and tired, just throw up your hands and live strong. To the ones trying hard not to end up lost. To the girls on the web trying to get on. To the men watching them trying to get off. Live strong. Live strong. The freaks come out at night, along with the vampires, eager bite. The opportunistic wolves howl at the streetlights. Sound the alarm, the snakes charm how you think. You slipping in the darkness, skinny dipping in swimming pools, headshot drink. Did your mom ever tell you to watch what you drink? We in the house. Politicians lobby for mollies, the asphalt trembles, they wanna quake that body. Tap that spine, take your spirit and your mind for a ride. This is 20 chance. You cycle through life like lands, and walks temptation, performances in hands. Ooh, it's the forbidden dance. You in a trance, basking in the shadows of the eclipse, under the cherry moon with your elixir, taking another sip. Ain't nobody messing with your clique. Everybody lost, looking for a team win. My, where we bleed in. We walk around crooked despite the burn we lead in. Think reality shows is what we believe in. You about that life, forgot about the power of God, but you remember to pick up that shower rod. You dreaming me at long nights. Temporary bliss, heart skip, a beat, musical jazz, lost your seat, your soul, your song. You ain't listening cause you so wrong. You gone hard for so long, but life is a trip. It only takes one weak moment to forget the name of this poem, which is live strong. Try to live strong. Live strong. Try all night long. Live strong. All night long. Live strong.
All right, let's do one more before we get into our conversation here. I think. Let's do that. There we go.
Thank God I'm alive now, I'm trying to live. I wake up and high five like we little kids. Then we off into the fire, so whatever will, let it be, I will be still. And that's me, and I ain't saying that it's perfect. There's plenty I don't like, complaining ain't worth it. I'm strong enough to fight. So when you living day to day and say you only trying to eat, but all you got is cereal, gone eat some fruity pebble sheet. Hard times need a rebel beat from the south side where the bass gotta stand, where the treble is. Trying to throw lemons and salt on my women, so my business is selling lemonade and pretzels. When it's half empty, man, it's always something. If life taught me nothing, it's always something. And you can cave to it and be a slave to it, but you gon' end up okay. So today, got $100 left and I owe 112, but still, it feel alright. Got a quarter tank of gas and I gotta make it last. I pass. It feel alright. Got a gig that's feeling this, killing my soul. Oh no, it feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright. Back on top and starting to feel like a chef on top. And only the hood know me like a black on shop. And talking to them LKs that could get you killed, but still, it feel alright. We're real young and to them voters who I try to kick off. We stop believing in the government, we politicking and getting money. Bad boys like the 80s Pistons, selling the drugs that they gave us as hell. This a hell of a system, how we supposed to get along? Keep writing them songs and hopefully right wrongs. And hopefully, man, hoping is only half of the battle. You praying and doing nothing like complaining about being out of shape, but you hate running. On my knees messed up, it's always something. If life taught me nothing, it's always something. And you can cave to it and be a slave to it, but you gon' end up okay. So today, got $100 left and I owe 112, but still, it feel alright. Got a quarter tank of gas and I gotta make it last. I pass. It feel alright. Got a gig that's feeling this, killing my soul. Oh no, it feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright. I seen what's happening to your world. I seen what's happening to your world. When the sky falls, it all seem to crash, but it don't last. I know it feels so bad, but it won't last. So whatever will be, you got this. Say whatever, get whatever to me. We got this. Let it be. I ain't tripping, I fight. And life's so real, but still don't it feel alright? Got $100 left and I owe 112, but still it feel alright. Got a quarter tank of gas and I gotta make it last. I pass. It feel alright. Got a gig that's feeling this, killing my soul. Oh no, it feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright. We gon' work it out, still gonna feel alright.
All right. So languages, right? Well, first, can I switch with my screen and still keep sharing? How can I do that? Well, y'all can see me in a box somewhere, right? All right. Well, check out the box for a second. Hi, everybody. It's really good to see you and to be here. And I think Rachel's introduction, which I appreciate so much, really does get into a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening. And I'll talk and then let you do some question asking and responding to what you're hearing, but it is going to be authentic. And I never give disclaimer. Actually, no disclaimers. Let's just do it. So languages, right? Languages. I can speak totally fine English. I really can. I even get confused like everybody else, whether I should split infinitives or like add things, prepositions to the ends of sentences. I'm really good at English, but I also grew up around the church, and the church, the black church, in the black church, the language is, I would say, significantly different, or can be. For example, let's see here. We got a couple, like, check this out first.
Swing low, sweet chariot.
Thumbs up if you know this song. You know this song? Okay. Good. Good.
Swing low.
I'm gonna make my window wider so I can see more of you all. I want to see as many of you all as I can.
Coming for to carry me.
So right, you know this, but my mother was also a DJ. And so being a DJ and growing up with a DJ as your mother, we also heard this.
Swing low. Time to move on. Light years in time.
Thumbs up if you know this one.
Free your mind and come fly with me. It's it.
Don't tell me Parliament never came out to Kansas and Oklahoma.
Star Johnny. Coming for to take you home.
We're gonna have as much of a party as we can have on Zoom tonight. All right, same song. That's the same song, right? So that's 3 different languages so far, but I'm not finished now because I grew up with hip hop as well. I grew up with hip hop. I was a child of hip hop. As you can see, I still love my hip hop. And so we grew up with this as well.
Nobody wanna speak. Now everybody keeping out the window when they hear me beating up the street. Is it Dre? Is it Dre? That's what they say every single motherfucking day. Yo, but I ain't tripping, I'm just kicking it. While my D's keep spinning and these hoes keep grinning, I'll be rolling in my 6-4. What everybody's saying. Hell yeah. What everybody's saying. Hell yeah.
See, now that's 4 different languages. And the 5th being how we talked on the streets. It was different from the King's English. I'm from the south side of Chicago now, and we add S's to everything that we say in Chicago. The grocery store here is called Jewel, but we call it Jules. White Castles, it's White Castles, not White Castle. We say y'all just like y'all. I think we got y'all from y'all, actually. And we say Joe, like when you don't want to use somebody's name, but you want to refer to somebody, oh, that's Joe over there. Hey, Joe, what's going on? And yes, we also said nigga. We said it a lot. We said kids, parents, old folks. It was 100% market saturation on the N word, as it's being called right now. Now that's a harsh word, especially right now, but I'm sharing this because it's about acknowledging people's cultures. The failure to acknowledge people's culture as legitimate on its own, but measuring it against our own culture is one of the critical missteps fueling the hatred, the vitriol, the deep misunderstanding that seems to be guiding America and driving us apart right now, guiding us literally into a wall. Come on, somebody. The lack of acceptance. To accept people as people, we must accept their culture, which includes languages. And I'm not the only person here who spoke several languages as a child. You can think back now to the many languages that you grew up around. And remember that as a child that you spoke at school different than you spoke at home. And you held these capacities to switch back and forth, sometimes in seconds. If you were talking to grandma and then your cousin was in the next room, wait. Does anybody here have relatives that are just plain country folks? Just like what is it like to talk to them? You know, it's like speaking a new language, and we cannot even communicate with them unless we do speak their language. And we have inside of us now multiple languages that we can access whenever we need to. And what I'm calling that is being bilingual. And the good news is you already are bilingual. You already are. But have you ever tried talking via text to somebody who was younger than you, that's like a whole different language. But you understand this, right? You know what this is, right? This is like rolling on the floor laughing, right? Laughing so hard that I'm crying. But what about this one right here, where these look the exact same almost, and the one on the left is used for like blowing off steam. So if you're sighing or you finally relaxing after a long day, hey, what you doing? You would send that one right there, finally relaxing. But if you accidentally use the one on the right instead, you would be making let's just say you would be making a different kind of proposition to somebody. That one on the right is more like, so what you up to right now? So, you know, like, I'm wondering if we could, it's the booty call emoji. That's what it is. Let me just say it right now, okay? It's Thursday evening. I'm gonna just say it. That's what that is. And so you can easily accidentally send one over the other, and it's not easy, especially when the language isn't yours. And if this is very confusing to you right now, then just go to Emojipedia. Like, it'll describe all of the definitions of all of the emojis, so you know which one to use when. And even then, it changes based on where you are. Y'all probably, in KO, probably got stuff that Chicago uses differently. And if all of this sounds like a headache, you all, then you're here finally. You're here. You're here. You are finally diagnosed. The inability to speak the native tongue in a communicable way is known as a communication disorder. Any speech pathologist here? A disorder involves difficulty with either speaking, hearing, processing, or any combination of these things. And when one of these is missing, the child is not only words behind, but can become worlds behind. The communication disorder creates a gap that makes it hard to exist in the world. Now, here's a fact. Communication disorders affect more than 42 million Americans. Of these, 28 million have a hearing loss, 14 million have a speech or language disorder. Let me just not hide my intent any longer, because I don't have 2 hours. We got like a few more minutes here. So let me not hide anything else. The church has a communication disorder. Other narratives exist around the church, but that's the best way I know how to put it. Speaking, hearing, processing life around us, there's a disconnect. And you can probably think of a church that is deficient at one of these, and you can probably tell now what it is. This is such a problem because we live in the bilingual age. 1 in 5 school-age children speak a language other than English at home. Most of our churches are not bilingual. I'm not meaning Spanish speaking or German or some other language. I mean that most communities speak more than one language, and yet all the church knows how to talk about is church. And a lot of times we don't even do that well. Like messy theologies and implied ecclesiologies and who Jesus is can be confused even within the same congregation, which is beautiful, but it can be difficult as well. A sort of rambling gospel that we can say sometimes. What is grace, mercy? Much less the relevance of the message with where the people are today. In other words, relevance means the ability to translate or to hear, speak, or process and understand. In other words, most churches are not bilingual. And this is an accessibility issue. We've never thought about it this way, but if I sat in a wheelchair and I went to church that had steps to their entrance, no matter how good that church was, no matter how nice they were, I might let somebody pick me up and carry me above the steps the first time, but I promise you I would never go again. And many people who live in wheelchairs have that same experience. Many people who speak different languages have that experience. It's the same with language. If my community is full of Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters and we claim to be compañeros en la lucha, but all of our service hymns are in English and we don't have any drums, tell me why you shocked that nobody is showing up. Like, you aren't speaking their language. We aren't interested in their language. We can't be interested in people's struggles without being interested in people. Racism is about the denial of bodies, the dehumanization, and without even trying, while actually trying to do the opposite, churches often participate in the devaluing of bodies by not listening. Happen.
There's too much truth for Zoom.
Oh no, no, we're having fun, folks. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Now wait. Oh, I have to share my screen again. This stinks. Can I just say that? Like, we got to get through this COVID. Wear your mask, folks. We got to get through this thing. All right. Let me try it again. Beautiful people. That looks right. That looks right. Oh. No, I was trying to. Anyway. How y'all doing? Because I'm frustrated right now. All right. Somebody's praying for me. All right. So University Church has done well in the recent decade. I've been there. It'll be 10 years in November, which I can't believe. And really by every metric, we've done pretty well. And when people ask why, it's not because they got their first Black pastor or a rapper or whatever. It's because the church found a multilingual pastor and decided to take seriously the languages that were being spoken in the community. There is no being a community church without being multilingual, possessing an experiential sensitivity to the possibility of other languages, not for the sake of conversion or increasing membership, but for genuine relationship. We're not healthy because there are more people or because the budget is bigger. We're healthier because we're in genuine relationship and able to love the people around us because they trust us, because they know that they are safe to be who they truly are. And that's what people are seeking right now, to be in relationship with a faith community that is responsible and doesn't participate in the violence that is already happening to their bodies outside of the church. They don't want to go into church and have more violence hoisted upon them, right? Being able to explore and deepen their faith without sacrificing anything. I remember the church that I grew up in. I grew up in the Black Baptist tradition. This was before I knew what a UCC was. And I thought that I would be serving in the Black Baptist tradition. I didn't know anything about UCC or denominations, anything. Like, church was church. And I remember I did a summer internship at this church, and it went really well. And I was excited about serving in the church for the first time in my life. I'm like 18, 19 years old. I'm like, okay, this is what it feels like. I had a summer to feel it. Like, all right, man, this might work here. Let's see. And the dinner before I'm about to go back to school at the end of the summer, the pastor, just me and the pastor, wants to encourage me, let me know things are going really well. How proud he was of me, said, we got it. When you graduate, we got a job waiting for you, and when you're ready to take this music stuff or this ministry stuff seriously and get rid of that music stuff, then, we got a place for you. Just let us know how you're discerning between choosing ministry and music, right? It's like, I was accepted, but only half of me was accepted. Only a part of me was allowed to be fully who I was in that space. And from that moment, not only did I know I would never set foot in that church again, but I said that I would pay attention to how many languages a church spoke, or more importantly, whether that church spoke the dominant cultural language of its immediate surrounding community. If there's a Latinx community around you, does your church include forms of that culture that say to them, we understand each other? If it's a bunch of Black folks around you, is the church including aspects of Black culture? And I realize that none of this is a monolith, right? We have to pay attention. But if they're speaking hip hop, then are you? And are we trying? The biggest gap we probably notice is with children. We were all brought, we being young ministers like me. I started at 27. I was the youngest pastor in the church's history, first Black pastor in the church's history. I was brought there to make the church more vibrant and ultimately younger. Like, can you bring some families in? We were brought to save the place, Rachel, no pressure, right? And when I started, these wonderful people asked, well, how do we get more families here? And I said, do you talk to them? Obvious, but it's not done often. Our church often becomes a clinic instead of being a commons. And who wants to go to a clinic? Because we have the opportunity to be a commons. I don't think anyone in our generation has a problem with God that is more pronounced than any other time in human history. We question, we doubt, we seek, we're cynical. Jeremiah, Job did the same thing. It is now more important than ever that we are bilingual and multilingual, that we have the capacity to speak multiple languages. And so I'm going to give you a chance to ask me some questions in a moment and really make the rest of our time about unpacking some of this in your context. But I want to offer four questions that I believe if a church asks itself and really does the hard work of answering these, it will be infinitely more valuable towards living out anti-racism and joining the community that we live in, building the beloved community, or even pushing the community that we live in. And there's nothing magical about these four questions, I promise you, but it helps tremendously to have it put together. What is happening here? Exit. Okay. Share. Let's do this. And so the first question is, what is the cultural language that is spoken most immediately outside of your church? What is the cultural language that is spoken most immediately outside your church? And I want you to workshop this with you, your leaders, because there are a lot of ways to answer this question, and it's intentionally vague to make room for your context. That, for example, there are blue collar workers, and how people who are blue collar workers think and speak needs recognition and needs to be recognized for its own value. That language is thought too, and that the way that people think, that teenage Black men think differently, punk rock kids think differently. Meth culture is different from weed culture, and meth and weed culture are different from heroin culture. And so learning a new language is learning to think in a new way. The second question is, do you speak in a way that is easily understood by the surrounding community? Which means, is the most basic disconnect being bridged? Like when you speak, when you share messages, when you do events, can the community even understand these things? What I'm saying is that there's a lot of church talk that we use that needs translating sometimes. Sometimes we need to comb through not just our bylaws, but like comb through our worship and our songs and our prayers, and sometimes like tape it once and just watch it with a stranger that you know who doesn't care about church at all, and say, do you understand that? Do you understand what we're talking about in this moment? Like, a lot of times the way that we're speaking cannot be understood very well because we use a lot of church words. And what this means is that there are no cookie cutter solutions. I quit Spanish once because I realized that the Spanish that I was speaking was only useful in Spanish class. Like, it was not, like, it was a whole different kind of Spanish on the South side than I was learning inside of the classroom. So it was really very little point in me continuing to do that. I should go learn Spanish from the people who are speaking it. And what I'm saying is, we too quit. We quit in the face of a learning challenge. In the church right now, we have a learning challenge. We have real challenges in front of us. They're not too big for us, not too big for God, but we do have challenges. The third question is, have you spoken with them? Again, this comes up a lot because people often assume ways of thinking or get so overwhelmed. How are we ever going to do this? We want, we got this community that we would love to be part of this church, and we want to be anti-racist, but it's just a room full of white folks. How do we do this? It can be a very overwhelming thought and idea. Listen, go talk to them. Go talk to them, invite them for a meal, be honest. We love you. We're in solidarity with your struggle, but we realize that we have to know you too, and we don't know you. Our gospel constantly puts us in relationship with strangers, and we need your help to do this well. We need your help to even figure out what we're trying to do right now. To allow ourselves to be led by people means we do have to go and speak to them, and some people will rebuff that. And some people will have some difficult things to say about what your church might have did 30 years ago and you didn't know what was going on, but it is the right way to go, to speak to people with whom we want to bridge the disconnect. And then finally, what do you really want from them? And what I mean is that often in church relationships with the community, there's a lack of mutuality. We want people to join our church, but we don't want to be in relationship with them. We want to grow our rosters. We want to grow our budgets. But what people are going to bring with them, we don't always want to hear. We don't always want to sing those songs. The drums are too loud. The guitars are too loud. The hip hop is too much, right? And what we're talking about here is being in relationship versus doing something so that we can congratulate ourselves. Self-pleasure, self-congratulatory action, that's masturbation. And a lot of the things that we do with the community is really about pleasuring ourselves and not being in relationships with people. And God calls us to be in relationship with people. And what this is really about is becoming the church. We can say the community church, but community and church to me are redundant terms. Community church is the church, and living out our mission is what is truly distinctive about the UCC, being able to go forth and talk about bodies and doing justice on these bodies and with these bodies, not for the sake of doing them, but because this is an act of God and a commandment of the gospel. And it's about churches also becoming more localized, because I don't know how it is out in KO, but I know that sometimes in the Illinois conference and other conferences I've been to, that when you get liberal, progressive places that want to save the world, that we become very global minded and locally ignorant. We know what's going on in the Philippines and every corner of Africa and everything else, but around the corner from us, we have no relationship. And we're talking about being local, not at the expense of being global, but remembering that if we're sent to the corners of the earth, there's a corner around the corner from us that we also need to be on. And so we're talking about becoming more localized, and or people who say right now, you might be saying you're a part of the leadership or clergy or what have you, and saying, we want to be more than just a church where people show up on Sundays. We want to do something. We want to really feel alive. We want to meet this moment in history and what's happening. We want to meet it in the right kind of way. Or there might be people here who are feeling sorry for what you don't have and staring at the ground and looking at your budget and looking at the leadership and saying, oh, we're just not there. We're too weak. That self-pity kind of mindset. Or we're ignoring assets that we have and possibilities that are around us. And we're talking about asset-based community assessments, that we are great at locating needs. As a people of God, we know where the needs are, but what about assets? Do we know where the assets are inside of our community as well? Of all of the things that Paul says, and when he says some things, I do go like, huh? What are you talking about? But of all the things that he says, I really do appreciate his argument with Peter in Galatians. It's one that I admire the most, where it's really an argument about the value of other cultures and the value of other identities and being a part of the body of Christ. They're arguing over circumcision and law and stuff, but it's really about who gets to belong to this. and what it means to belong, and what we have to sacrifice as people with access and privilege and power, so that people who have not any of those things are able to belong to the body of Christ in the way that God has called us. This is what we're about. This is who we are, and this is what God needs us to be. And so I want, those are the 4 questions again, but let's discuss. I want to open it up, and I'm sure there's a chat box or something that I will figure out a way to go look at in a moment here, or somebody else can call out questions. But let's just spend the rest of this time talking and having a little bit more conversation. Let me see. I'm gonna, looks like something. Okay. All right. So what do y'all, what's up? What's up, y'all? Come on, somebody talk to me.
You want us to just jump in?
I don't know whoever's moderating should say the best way to do this. I don't mind. I know we don't have a lot of time, so if you have a question, it's probably, you might need to add a little context or something, but try to move as close to the question as possible.
Go right ahead.
Julian, my name's Chris Moore. I serve at a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Tulsa, like lots of cities in the United States, is divided into sections.
Right.
And we have a long, storied, awful, brutal history, particularly between the north side of Tulsa and the south side of Tulsa, which is largely a division that is black and white. And efforts between churches to bridge that gap have not lasted for the most part. I mean, there are some exceptions. And one of the struggles in trying to find that is your language about language is very helpful, and that translation process. And it's also helping folks realize that that's a really complex, there's a lot of layers to that onion, so that if you're going to reach out and have a conversation, let's say we were to connect with another congregation on the north side, predominantly black congregation, and start some dialogue and have some conversation, that there's an effort there to understand that's one translation effort. So one of the myths that operates here in Tulsa is that North Tulsa is a monolithic black voice. There's a single black opinion about things, and being able to do that, even wanting to engage in the translation that I hear you talking about, is a frustrating marathon of work. So my question after all of that is to say, what do you have techniques or ideas, or other than you have to be prepared for a marathon?
Well, I do think, first, thank you, Chris. And the story that you share is one that's shared here in Chicago as well. And it's one that really got me into this way of thinking about languages and stuff as a way, not as a way out, as a way through, the activists for Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives, which is the larger movement, Black Lives Matter being like an organization within it. There's also a slogan that's just Black Lives Matter, not connected to any organization. It can be very confusing, but the movement for Black Lives, the wider movement, is really cynical about the role of the church and our ability. And you're talking about along lines of black and white. I'm here on the south side of Chicago where it's like everybody black, you know, and there's still that same kind of cynicism because of the ways in which churches have used power to co-opt movements and to co-opt language and to co-opt people's voices. And so when the movement they were starting to protest, they were doing all of this important work, and they didn't want pastors there. They didn't want to show up at churches and do anything. In fact, they would say things at the marches and protests to talk about the hypocrisy of religion and the role of bolstering racism, you know, and being a location where capitalism and patriarchy were alive and well, the prosperity gospel, what have you, right? And so it really took, like, I was not disappointed by that. I'm saying this because I hear it in what you're saying, Chris. Like, I was hurt by that. Like, I was crushed by that, and couldn't sleep over it because my gospel and my sense of call told me that that we were family, that we needed to be doing stuff together, and we needed to figure out a way to do that. And so it really was about, like, more than the preparing for a marathon, I think it was about preparing to be humbled, preparing to hear very difficult things that people would say about me, about the church, and not taking it personal. I didn't do anything, right? But recognizing that people have these historic hurts that they need to be safe to share. If we're going to be in relationship, they need to trust that I can hold their hurt in that kind of way, and be responsible when they then said, or when I said to them, hey, what do you need? Because that's a question that we got to ask, right? Like, we're not going to pretend we know what to do. Tell us what you need. We want to be down. We want to do the right thing. And we want to be led by you. We want to be led by you. And so when they would speak up, what they would say is, like, we need meeting space. And so we would give them a room in the church just to do their own thing. We wouldn't show up. We wouldn't pray for anything, right? Like, just here, take the room, go do your thing, do your work. And that was the way that the church first got involved in the movement in Chicago, right? And after that, after they met for long enough, and it was months, to finally say, like, what else do you need? We think we can do more than this. If all you need from us is a room, and that's our role in freedom, then that's easy. Here we go. But what is there anything else? And because we had built that relationship, because when they had march and protest, or they asked us to announce something, we announced it. When they asked us to show up somewhere, we showed up. You know, like, I would impress upon the congregation really, like, all the time in 2014, 2015, when the movement really got going in the Black Lives Matter iteration of it, telling them, like, if they ask us, we need to figure out a way to make it happen if we can. Unless it violates our values or whatever, then we can talk about it. But if they're just saying show up, then that's the least we can do, is show up with our bodies to build and develop that relationship. And so, yeah, it is. I think the marathon piece is true, and just recognizing that the moment we confess and repent doesn't mean that the other folks who we are confessing and asking for forgiveness and seeking to be in relationship with will say, oh, we were waiting for that, now let's go. You know, that's not going to happen. So in that sense, Chris, you're absolutely right. But I think it also is about a stance and a posture of humility that we bring to this, knowing that we have access, privilege, power, language, traditions that carry, you know, centuries with us, and that we need to be responsible with those things, and recognize that even if it wasn't us, we've hurt some folks in the past. Our peers and colleagues have, and what's our place in that. So
I appreciate that.
Michael Poge has indicated he has a question.
Thank you. Julian, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sorry it was so short. Sitting in my study here, I could listen to you for a long time, because there are a lot of issues to be discussed and a lot of languages to be learned. Earlier today, I was in a Zoom meeting with a diversity group at our local university, Wichita State University.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I'm a retired pastor. I'm 75 years old. I'm glad to be a part of this and to be hearing you. And the last church I pastored was in a black neighborhood that basically became black during white flight in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And the church said very intentionally that they wanted to be a community church, a church for the neighborhood. It failed to do that. I failed to help them do that. There are a lot of reasons, and now it's closed. So, but at the meeting today, the whole idea was inclusion, diversity, even creating a systemic racism major at the university. 90% of the students come from South Central Kansas, and 90% are white. So, but I have this quote, and we talked about it a little bit, but it's a quote that I could sort of see as a church mission statement, especially in the situation where I was. But the quote is, "If you fail to understand white supremacy, everything else will confuse you." And I just think that's a very powerful quote, a very powerful statement. In the context of the church, though, what does that bring to your does that inspire anything to you, in you? If you fail to understand white supremacy,
what does that quote do to me,
so
right?
much of an issue. Yeah, if you fail to understand white supremacy, everything else will confuse you. And
yeah, I think it's about,
Daddy, what's
well,
that?
first of all, do you want to say hello to everybody?
I think so, yeah.
Stick your head in there and say hello, okay? All right, there we go. Now go upstairs. I'll see you in a minute. All right, so they have been like anxiously awaiting to disrupt me for 15 minutes here, and it's beautiful. So
have they had dinner yet?
Yeah, right. We're gonna find out exactly what this is about in just a moment. I think what I hear in that quote is the reality that is really difficult, and I heard that difficulty in the debates last night also. But it's really a difficulty for some people to recognize that race has been a central tenet of building America and building American churches and building the American economy and building schools and building the police force, and like every institution in this country has been built with a concept of race or with some understanding of race. And so the notion of white supremacy or racism or nationalism, what have you, is like we can't look at America and American supremacy without looking at Christian supremacy, without looking at white supremacy, without looking at capitalist supremacy. They all built each other. They all built each other. And which one came first? We can have the fun Bible study and adult education to talk about it and know it better, but ultimately they're all the same gang right now, and they all wearing the same colors, and dismantling one will require the instability of the others as well. We will have to, and I'll take your quote and reverse it. In order to destabilize white supremacy, we will also have to destabilize Christian supremacy in America.
Right. Yes.
That will be tremendously difficult, but it must happen. It must happen. And that doesn't mean get rid of Jesus. You know, I think everybody here kind of understands what that means. It means to get rid of Christian supremacy and capitalist supremacy. Like, all of those things are going to have to happen, and they're going to be in concert with one another. That's my response.
Well, they're all part of the system.
They all are the system, you
Yeah.
know, like they build the system. And we have, I think, always looked at systems in a silo. Oh, we're going to fix education. Oh, we're going to fix economics. We're going to fix the hospitals. They all work together. Like, these are all talking to each other. And it's a lever system. When you change one, the other reacts. And so as we are fighting capitalism, we're seeing white supremacy raise its head. As you know, like the cause and effect, they're so correlated that it doesn't even, it's not even worth it to call it a correlation. It's like, just like, they're not one and the same, because they deserve separate conversations, all of them, and they're brilliant people who are talking about each of them in some really powerful ways, but they working together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I have a question, and I'm just going to ask it because I can. Julian, after what's it been, 20-something years since the UCC adopted the pronouncement to become a multiracial, multicultural church?
Yeah.
And we're still, what, 90-something% white?
Right.
What do you think this means for us as in the future as a United Church of Christ church denomination?
One of my favorite things about the UCC, and what made me, what drew me to it when I felt like a church exile, was the ease with which, and I now see it's not very easy. Nothing congregational is easy, but the ease with which the UCC can make fairly controversial statements, but that also follow kind of common sense guidelines about what it means to be human in the world. Whether it's open and affirming, or statements in support of immigrants, or being anti-racist, like, when those statements come out, they mean something to the people who are affected by them. That it says that, hey, there's a church here who cares. Now, the difficulty is, I think a lot of times, and I don't know if this is a UCC problem as much as it is a liberal progressive church problem, like, we stop at the statement. Like, the statement, all the work was the statement. And so, like, as hard as we worked, and I talk about this for Sunday, the sermon for Sunday, so I don't want to steal that moment, but here we are right now. You just hear it again. Like, sometimes we do the hard work, and like, because that's the work, it's like we do the sighing emoji. And it's like, all right, this is the work, you know, like, we got ourselves to this point. And I think we have to be a little bit more, we have to begin to dig deeper and deeper, as I think we're doing, as good as any other church, I think, you know, but to look at not only the roles of systems, but to be honest about our participation in those systems. And I remember the first synod I went to and heard people talking about Hawaii, which is like this everybody knows story and nobody knows story in the UCC. Like, you think you kind of know it, but it was like impressive for me to see people saying like, yeah, we really got that wrong. And we're gonna have to pay for that, you know, for as long as they want to make us pay. And that's what it means for us to be in relationship. We're going to do that, and we're going to move forward and try to do the right thing. Like, when it comes to race relations, when it comes to economics, the roles that the church have played for decades have been pretty negative, you know, and I'm not just saying the UCC church, just the church period. And so we got to figure out ways how to turn statements into strategy. And that's something that I've always been impressed, again, that whether it's Tracy Blackman or other folks who, when you were in the national office, you know, folks really took that seriously. Like, we got some words here, and we're gonna make these words pretty, but like, let's do some work, and let's figure out how to exist in the world in a different kind of way. And that's why I'm here. I think that's why many folks who are a part of this, you know, in this room right now, are here because the UCC is, I think, one of our best hopes at doing that. Like we're set up to do that very well.
Julian, my name is Shan, and I live in Lawrence, Kansas, which is sort of known as the drop of blue in a very red state.
That's right.
But nonetheless, it's Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma surrounded. But one of your commentary on languaging that really struck me was not only what cultural language groups are spoken in your churches. By the way, I am 8 days retired.
Oh.
The second one was, do you speak in a way understood by your community? And I moved to America in roughly 10th grade. And so I lived overseas almost all the time before that, born in Africa and lived all kinds of places. And so I find it very difficult to be within the context of an all-white congregation, all-white town, mostly white area of the state of Kansas, at least. And to speak in a way that's understood by my own community, because I speak so many different languages. And the only time I lived anywhere where I thought I could speak both pretty well was I speak English pretty well, and I spoke Filipino really well, because most Filipinos speak English and will connect. How do we go about being in a community where neither one of us really speak a common language, and they can be vastly different ones? How do we sit down and say, let's speak this together, let's speak something together?
Yeah, I think it really is the reason. The heart of your question is the reason why I talk about cultural languages as opposed to just English, Spanish, Filipino, German, what have you. Recognizing that when people live in a community together, even without knowing it, by virtue of sharing that same geography, that they're sharing something. And to figure out what they are sharing together, I think becomes the work of those communities. And it's not like your work alone. So it shouldn't be the work of just the church saying, oh, well, how are we going to get with these folks? Like, there has to be, again, with mutuality, a desire for those communities to gather as well and to get together as well. And so that's when the leadership gets together, sits at a table one day and says, what do we have in common? Like, is there anything we can build on? Anything. And whatever that is, let's start building on it and believe in that scripture about a mustard seed. Like let's take that little thing and be faithful with that little thing and see if God will do more with it if we are faithful with it.
Thank you.
It's not easy. I'm certainly not an expert at it, but these are thoughts that have come to me across the past 10 years, and with a lot of, there's so many examples of moments where you reach out to a group of folks who you desperately want to be in community and solidarity with, and nothing, like there's just nothing back. And to try to have some sense of resilience, I don't love that word, but I think it works here, to say, okay, we still know that it's valuable to be in relationship with people. Let's keep trying. This way isn't going to work. That goes kind of towards the marathon metaphor that Chris used, and toward the humility piece that I added to it. But like, we got to find something we have in common and try to build on that as much as possible. I know we're at 8:15. I got time. I'm good. Like, if folks want to talk longer, I'm okay. And I think I saw comments about like the slides. I don't mind sharing those as well, so I can do that.
Julian? Oh, go ahead. Julian, there was a question in the chat, and then we'll ask Peter Lucky to ask his question. But the question in the chat comes from D. Smith, who says, how can we be subversive and use the system to change the system? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, D, I don't know if you want to say more. If you don't want to say, then maybe type. What use the system to change the system might mean. I think I know, but I'd rather ask than go off and try to answer this question I think is in my head. So I don't know if D wants to talk or type or something. Oh no, I certainly don't read it as condescending at all. Let me try my answer at it. I think that there are ways in which there are systems already in place that were essentially created by, and I guess my challenge here is the system. I don't want to talk about it like a monolith, because it looks different and manifests itself different in so many different spaces. But like our worship, for example, and probably all of our worship, comes out of a European model and way of practicing in the world. It is a part of the system, so to speak. And yet we can do some incredibly subversive things in that worship to be able to welcome people, to be able to lift up scripture, to question scripture, to, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we're using the system and we're subverting it. Like, sometimes a new form is so difficult for people to understand that we have to use what people are using already. I'm a rapper. I know where rap comes from. I know where rap is right now is $1 billion industry that makes a ton of money subjugating women and being hyper capitalists. And, you know, I get that, but I operate in that industry and then just write my own songs and try to build my own following as an independent artist. So you all have to go and follow Pure Quest on all the social medias, parenthetically, because that really matters for us independent artists. But anyway, like, I have to do that. I have to use it, right? But just right there, right? Like, I'm saying, can you please go on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and give me a like, a share, a follow. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. And yet, if the message is going to get where we want to get it to, and if we think it's worthy, this is the path and avenue that we have to use right now. And so it's sort of in that way that I'm answering the question. I'm thinking about that scripture. The citation of it is escaping me right now. Pretty sure it's Matthew, though, to be innocent as wolves, or innocent as sheep, and as wise as serpents. You know, like, that feels like what you're saying and what you're asking right now. And I think in some ways what we're trying to do, certainly in Chicago, and our relationships with University of Chicago and the medical center up there, and conversations with the police and all of that stuff, like, we're using those routes and avenues that exist already, knowing that they are inadequate, knowing that they don't fully represent people in the way that they need to, and don't fully humanize people. We're using them to try to stretch them and change them. That's the best answer I got.
This is Peter Lucky. I'm a retired UCC pastor, and I think I'm just very much in the same zone with Dee. And I think you basically answered my question, because I keep thinking University Congregational University Church. I went to CTS right on the doorstep of a very heady elite university in the middle of the heart of the South Side of Chicago. And how do you, I mean, what a place of different languages and different ways of looking at the world. How do you walk that walk in that kind of environment?
I think it really is, at least for me. I mean, we're still figuring it out. I'll say that. A lot of what turned around the congregation and moved us really towards health was to stop trying to be all things to all people, I guess is the scripture. You know, like you described our community and context really well. Everybody's there. Everybody's there. And so in some ways, this is different and similar to communities like I think Shan described, where it's like only us. It's just us, you know, or somebody described where it's a little bit more homogenous, you know. And I think it really was for us about saying, this is what we believe, this is who we're going to try to be, and we're going to just tell everybody that, you know. And we're going to tell the kids in Woodlawn, a neighborhood just south, you know, we're going to tell the kids in Woodlawn in a different kind of way than we're going to tell Barack Obama's neighbors. We're going to be a little bit different in our presentation of that, but ultimately it's the same gospel. It's the same message. And so, like, parts of what we're doing is getting clear in our own language and how we speak and how we share that, and then being able to ask, like, well, who do we want to talk to? Who do we want to hear from is probably the better question. I think that's the question asked with the right power dynamic. Who do we want to hear from? And being able to approach them to say, hey, this is who we are. Do you want to talk to us? You know, sometimes they won't, sometimes they will. I don't know if I'm answering your question fully, but trying to. I know that there can be a real temptation when you have communities and groups and constituencies around you, and we don't live in an us and them world. So take my use of them and they a little bit lightly. I'm just describing communities that don't identify with being part of our community, you know, our faith community, as them outside of our circle, the circle of the we, what have you. But like, a lot of times we can be seduced to trying to bend our mission and flex who we are and what we do so that they will be okay. And I think that this is the very delicate tension, is that, yes, we need to listen, we need to make ourselves available, we need to do what we can, especially if we want to be in mutual relationship with people. But it also means that, like, we're still the church. And so we're still going to do what we feel is important. We're still going to take communion. You know, we're still going to do some of these things. And if we can be in relationship and still maintain our integrity in systems language differentiation, you know, if we can be well self-differentiated and be in relationship with others and have those kind of boundaries, then some beautiful things can happen. But a lot of times I see churches, like a lot of nonprofits, get into what they call mission creep. You know, like our mission statement changes every year based on who's writing the grant and where we need the money and what, you know, what, oh, you all do computer tech? Oh, we're a computer tech agency now. You know, like, I think churches could be a lot like that sometimes. And we need to, at a certain point, say, we would love to be in relationship. We want to do that. And not but, and this is who we are. This is what we're bringing to this relationship.
This is Mike Poge again. I know this is my second time around, but just a couple of things briefly. In Lawrence is a man named Kevin Wilmot, who is he teaches at KU, and I know some people know him or have at least heard of him. And he writes movies with Spike Lee. I mean, now one of the problems is most of us don't want to hear or see what Spike Lee, you know, puts out there,
right? Because
it's the truth, and the truth is painful. But I heard Kevin speak 2 days ago on Zoom like this, and he's an amazing, articulate, brilliant man. So, you know, maybe KO can pull him in, or we can go visit him on his footstep or something, and just take advantage of his presence and his wisdom. Secondly, I saw the film and I read the book, I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin. And I don't know if any of us I've seen that film. It's on Netflix, actually. Yeah, and to me, it's really, really important. And in my mind, I was changing it around. It's James Baldwin who is saying, "I am not your Negro." What if the church, in quotes, the church said that it was Jesus who was saying, "I am not your Negro"? How would that change our approach to anti-racism?
Right. I mean, or that Jesus was of Middle Eastern descent, you know, and and ancestors along with him come out of and are part of the African diaspora. What, you know, can people even wrestle with that thought? And I think that that's one of the key. It's one of the real challenges in all of this. I know you all had the video with Brian Stevenson that talked a lot about, you know, setting up these different relationships within the system and what have you. He's brilliant at talking about that. And there are other brilliant people, the brother you just mentioned and others as well, you know, who know what they're doing, who are localized, and you can be in relationship with. And it would be wonderful to try to do that. I think any kinds, especially in this moment where we're not able to get together and not able to really congregate, we can be digesting and wrestling with the pieces of art that have been most influential, a part of the Black experience. If we let's really focus this conversation on race to close out, like the Black experience, whether it's the James Baldwin stuff, whether it's, I mean, Netflix has a ton, Netflix, Amazon, like there's a lot there. If you're looking for it, or just Google it, like you'll find some really powerful movies and pieces of art to take in. But my challenge to us, and I think it's a part of answering Edith's question as well, is like, yeah, let's do the book group with the Ibram Kendi book and the Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility, and whatever, Black Fatigue, like let's, whatever books and pieces of art are out there, let's digest them. Let's do them. Oscar Michelle, absolutely. Let's do that stuff. If you can watch everything Spike Lee has done, do it. Do it. Absolutely. Like,
Yes.
And you have time to do it. We should absolutely do it and be doing it in our homes and showing our children and all of that stuff, right? But like, let's do it as a means to a greater end. Let's have a sense of a greater end in mind. I'm going to watch this art. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to take in this content of Black America that I'm ignorant about, because I ultimately want to be in better relationship with these people, because I find solidarity and identity in sharing life with these people. That's why I want to take their art that they consider important, and no matter the language, I'm a try to understand and hear it and sit with it. And when we do that, we then begin to suspend even our judgment on the language. When people talk certain ways or say the N-word or whatever, like, you just listen to it, because you have this like holy experience of being able to experience a person in their rawness and in their authenticness in that moment. So what are we doing bringing any kind of judgment even close to that holy of holies? You know, like, let's just take it in. If they cussing, whatever they doing, let's take it in, because it is such a valid experience. It's something they've called valid. And so I am going to consider it valid in my digestion of it, because I want to be in relationship with them. And that's the piece that I think the progressive church, the liberal church, you could tell whenever I'm at University Church, I always do scare quotes around them and kind of make fun of them. I'm not a huge fan of either of those words, because in actual practice, they end up turning out to be a lie a lot. And people aren't as liberal or progressive as they think they are. But like, if we're gonna take in this art and do this work, and let's do it because we want to be in relationship. Let's not do it so we could say, I've seen every Spike Lee movie, that has ever been made. So what? Like who cares?
Right.
My people are dying. I don't care how much Baldwin, Robin DiAngelo, Ibram Kendi, I don't care who likes Michelle Obama or subscribes to her podcast. I don't care about any of that. My people are dying. Are you going to help me in the fight for freedom from my people? Are you going to do that or not? The art will help us have a better conversation, but it cannot be where things end, because freedom does not come through art alone. And so we have to be able to use those things as a means to the greater end and the work that we're trying to do together.
Thank you, Julian. We appreciate it so much.
My honor.
Yeah. Let's have some, use your reactions down there on the bottom and your emojis down there on the bottom of the screen. Okay, thank you. Seriously, it's been a pleasure meeting you and learning more about your work, and thank you also for taking time with the questions and the comments, and to all of you who've gathered here and your questions. We are going to end, not quite, but of course with our announcements. Tomorrow we have a workshop during the middle of the day, and then our evening celebration and storytelling beginning at 7 tomorrow night. Like we have done the other days, the individual that led our morning prayers will be leading our closing prayer. So I'd like to invite Kayla Bonnewell, the pastor of the Church of the Open Arms and the Cathedral of Hope in Oklahoma City, to offer our closing prayer. Kayla was also a member of the Next Generation Leadership class with Rachel and Julian. So we're so thankful for these young people and what they bring to us. Kayla, can I turn it over to you?
Absolutely. Let's pray. God, help us to have the courage and confidence and humility to learn and speak and embrace multiple languages. Help us to not only be interested in people's struggles, but also in people. Help us to not only be globally minded and locally ignorant, but locally engaged and intelligent. Help us to not stop at the statements, but embody the compassion and justice of Jesus. Bless Julian, his family, and his ministry. Bless all of us, all of our families, and all of our ministries. Help us to advocate for marginalized communities and practice peace in every setting of our life. Help us to dedicate ourselves to being all the things that we want all of our churches to be. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.